If you think Greenpeace is radical for spray painting baby harp seals, brace yourself. For the sake of the environment, the Voluntary Human Extinction Movement wants to eliminate the human race from the planet. Here to explain, the group's founder, Les Knight. He joins us from Portland, Oregon. Les Knight, welcome.
Welcome to another conversation. So today I've got with me Les Knight, who I'm going to let introduce himself, although actually I don't think you really need much of an introduction, Les, but I'm going to give you a slight challenge, which is to introduce yourself, but without talking about the Voluntary Human Extinction Movement, because that's what we're going to be talking about throughout the whole of the rest of the thing. So try and do that.
Well, that's not going to be easy because that's how I identify. I'm a volunteer, but I'm also a supply teacher in public schools here in Oregon, which is just north of California for reference. And I've been at it for 45 years or so. And most people don't think of it as a career, but it is for me. I've really enjoyed being a supply teacher. Moving around from school to school and meeting a lot of different students, a lot of different teachers. It's given me a interesting perspective, the timeline, and so on. Students are they're a lot freer to express themselves these days. Their appearance is such a variety. When I was in high school, we all looked the same. Tried really hard to look the best the same. I saw a yearbook from somebody in the Midwest that looked just like us. So I guess it was kind of a cultural, this is how you look. Now, it's just wonderful. People really express themselves in just amazing ways. And in Portland public schools, there used to be these ridiculous no bare midriff, straps have to be a certain width, and so on. Some middle school girls, middle school is just before our, let's see, it would be, well, anyway, it's before high school.
Yeah.
They prepared their presentation, went to the school board, and they said, look, the reason you're doing this is because you say it's distracting to boys. This is ridiculous. We have to police ourselves just for the, so that boys aren't distracted. And, they made a really good presentation, and the board changed everything. And now it's a fairly reasonable dress code, and it applies to both males and females. You have to cover your front, and the back can be bare. Anyway, it's changed the mood, and of course, people kind of police themselves. Nobody's going to be too outrageous. You're going to wear that. But anyway, the same, needs, the need to belong, need to be accepted, develop an identity. These things haven't changed since, ever.
And just sort of like briefly touching on what we're going to fully get into, do a lot of the kids that you supply teach, do a lot of them recognize you from any interviews you've given?
Not that many, no. It's kind of funny. I guess it's not their channel. Well, some of the environmental science teachers have showed the Tucker Carlson video because it touches on exotic invaders and, are we an exotic invader? And it's a good discussion starter. And so some people have recognized me from that, but that was so long ago. I've gotten old since then.
Or should we put it less young? You've just gotten less young.
There you go. I've matured.
So getting on to the actual main bit of what I wanted to talk to you about. So I told you before we started recording, but one of the reasons I wanted, I guess it was actually my main reason I wanted to talk to you was, one, I wanted to focus on in this conversation about the story of the voluntary human extinction, how it came about, what was that like, the experience of it building, getting more traction, all of that sort of stuff. But also another bit was when you got the traction and started getting more media attention, it seems to me, and maybe honestly, I might just be being ignorant, but it seems to me that within the sort of procreation subject, out of any organization I can think of, VHEMT has been basically done the best in terms of getting media attention. Maybe there are other organizations that have gotten the same amount of media attention. Maybe I could think of a group like Population Matters, but I think Population Matters is a lot bigger and has a lot more funding just from the outside, from an outside perspective. So I really think it's like a testament to what VHEMT has been able to do, the fact that they've gotten so much attention. So to bring it like back to the start, um, when did, or actually just to focus on you very quickly before we get to VHEMT, when did you start to have these thoughts personally about, population, procreation, all of this sort of stuff?
Well, I went back to university after getting out of the terrorist organization I had been conscripted into. It was about 1970, and I did some anti-war, of course. That was important because I realized what a ridiculous thing that it all was, and how inhumane and cruel the invasion and occupation of a sovereign nation was. But also the environmental movement was really taking off. We had our first Earth Day in 1970, and Paul Ehrlich had just written The Population Bomb, and when he was on Johnny Carson, which is a very popular late night show, TV show at the time, it really took his sales took off, and he promoted an organization called Zero Population Growth. The idea was we only have two offspring, and then the population will stop increasing, and it'll be very much better for the environment. It was mainly an environmental movement. But of course, when two people have two people, that's four people. So it was really bogus from the very start, except that people were already mainly having two, and this legitimized it and said, okay, there's no environmental impact from having two. Great. First two have no environmental impact. The third one, though, watch out. So I thought, no, this is not one. And I thought, well, none really. Why should we create any? I can't think of a reason to justify the intentional creation of one more of us by anyone, anywhere. And then
Mm,
the more I thought about it, I thought, why should we perpetuate Homo sapiens, the species which is causing so much damage to the environment? It really should be phased out. That's the most humane way to do it. Uh, and later I found out it's called deep ecology. And the argument, there were two sides of environmental movement, deep ecology and human ecology. And it's still going on today, really, the same division. There are some people who, like myself, are more concerned about the environment than humanity. But we're trying to have protected zones. Maybe I'm getting further ahead than you wanted,
mm,
but protect areas of the natural environment, and they want to keep people out. And so the anthropocentric side of the environmental movement, which is really pretty darn strong,
yeah.
says that we want a rights-based, and they mean human rights-based. Human is understood. Want a rights-based policy, and so that's the same conflict as which is more important. So I got carried away. Anyway,
Nice.
I started I called it the Human Extinction Movement, and it wasn't long before I got tired of hearing people, "Oh, you want everybody to die?" I mean, they still do that, but I'm going, no, no, phase out, stop procreating. So there's a blind spot with our natalist conditioning, cultural conditioning, that is just kind of ignored. It's
Mm,
we procreate. That's just something that happens. So I added the V to the voluntary human extinction, and then I noticed, wow, look at that! It says vehement. All I need to do is take the T off of movement. So we got an acronym that says vehement, which is what we are. We are vehement. So they say, "Are you serious? Are you kidding? We're vehement." So uh, that helped a little, but really, still, people will say, "Oh, so you want everybody to die?" Well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
eventually they will. No, that's not the point. We want people to stop creating more of us.
So, you mentioned that you started it first as the Human Extinction Movement, and then it became the Voluntary Human Extinction Movement. But where did the thought come around to even start a movement? Because I'm sure a lot of people, you know, are concerned about however they want to phrase it, overpopulation or just population in general.
Hmm.
But you went, the extra mile and thought, "Oh, actually, I'm going to start organizing something around this." So, where did your idea come from to actually start something? And was it just you that started Vehement, or was it a collection of people that you sort of brought together?
No, everybody else was really anthropocentric. I really had to go out on my own.
Mm,
I think if people, there are these blocks to thinking things through, and one of them is natalism. And there was a was it Italian? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm blocking on Amanda's program.
mm,
He was a philosopher who finally became antinatalist, and he was thinking it through, just going step by step as a philosopher. And he would arrive at the point where humans would go extinct. And he go, no, well, that negates the whole thing because we can't have humans going extinct. And then he
mm.
realized eventually, after getting up against it a couple times, yeah, what's wrong with that? Go ahead,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
should go extinct. But I did not experience those roadblocks. I just kept thinking it through and going, yeah, there's really, we're all going to die eventually. We just phase ourselves out. No harm.
But what made you actually start organizing? Where did the idea come from to start a movement? Had you been inspired from the anti-war movement, or was it somewhere else?
I guess it would be zero population growth. They had chapters all over the country at
Ah,
the time. It was very popular, mainly young people, uh, which is great because that's who's going to be breeding soon.
yeah,
And they changed their name, I think it was in 2002, to Population Connection, because they decided that the concept of a human population which no longer increases was just too radical. So
yeah.
they are
And
PC now.
and what was it like when you first started it? So you said you had to really sort of go out on a limb on your own. Um, how? Well, I guess two questions. First, what did that consist of? Did you just start the movement by making a website, or did you just start by leafleting, or what did you actually? How did you actually start?
Yes, we were very limited in the original. We didn't even have photocopy machines at first. We had ditto machines. So the dissemination of information was really just word of mouth, and
Mm,
you know, uh, I didn't really promote it in that way because there wasn't a way to do it. Uh, in the 80s, we all had access to photocopy machines and pretty cheap. Uh, And so zines became a thing, short for magazine.
yeah.
People are still doing it today, but it really took off because it was a method for anybody who could put pen to paper and put it in a photocopy machine and mail it out. And it was how I first disseminated the voluntary human extinction movement method. I mean, it took me years to finally get one the way I thought it, the first one out. Um,
Mm,
It was in 1991 that the first one went out, and I had been collecting addresses for a while. So the 1991 is a year that a lot of media say that's when it started, which is okay. That's fine. Uh,
mm,
that's when the first newsletter went out, and then an artist named Nina Paley saw it, thought, yeah, this is good, and did some graphics for it. And I just changed the whole thing. I'm not an artist. I just had
mm.
this simple, uh, which a lot of zines were, but it wasn't very interesting to look at. You got to have some nice things around the text, and so that really helped a lot. But what really did it was the internet. In 1996, that became accessible. I was like, oh, boy, no more newsletters. It's
Mm.
really a lot of work to print them all up and mail them, put the addresses on them. It's very expensive as well. And so with the internet, it took off in 1996.
So was you mentioned an artist, Nina Paley, got in contact with you to help out and provide some artwork. So was she, I guess, the second member of Vehement, or was there already other people involved by that point?
Yeah, I wasn't paying any attention to how many people were agreeing with me, and just kind of having fun with it. And um, I don't know as though very many people actually agreed with me when I was explaining it to people. They just thought it was interesting, and you know, uh, yeah, it was. I mean, it wasn't like they bothered to say that's crazy. Because obviously it's crazy. You don't have to,
Mm.
tell me that. So, I mean, I'll never see the day there are no humans on the planet. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but uh, once it got on the internet, I started getting little pieces of oh, I guess the first one was New Age magazine. They saw it
Mm.
and wrote a very nice article on the concept, and that helped a lot. Oh, in fact, the Reader's Digest picked it up and said, they put it in their "That's outrageous" page. And I know, right? And they said the first step to eliminating bad ideas or something, I forget how they pronounced it, is to expose them. I said, "Oh no, please don't expose me." How many languages? How many copies? And years later, in fact, I talked with someone at a table at a environmental law conference, and she said, I saw this in the Reader's Digest when I was 7 years old. And I thought, yes, that's right. And I still think that way. She decided not to procreate. It's just great. So you
Yeah,
never
well,
know.
yeah. Well, I can actually, talking of you meeting someone who saw Vehement when they were a child, I have really vague memories of seeing an interview with Vehement when I was a child as well. And I'm really going off the top of my head here, so I might be getting all of this wrong. But I think it was a European contingent. Are there European groups
Oh,
of
sure.
Vehement?
Yes,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it was an interview on the BBC with a guy who I'm pretty sure was from somewhere in Europe, talking about the voluntary human extinction movement. And it was just, you know how the news is, it was probably just like
Hmm.
a piece that they thought, oh well, this is something that's quirky, let's do a piece on that, and
Right, right.
that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I remember seeing that as a kid and thinking like, oh, that's odd, but then not thinking
Right.
anything more of it. And then
Uh-huh.
when I started getting connected with and different antinatalists, um people started to mention Vehement, and then I then looked it up and we met, etc., etc. And then it brought this memory back, and I was like, oh yeah. And then I tried to find the actual interview, and I think I found it somewhere on YouTube.
Oh,
So
all right.
maybe I'll try and find it again and link it
Yeah.
in
That's,
the description.
yeah, I'd like to see it. I was on the BBC once, and it was a very short one. And of course, the person did not agree at all,
Mm.
but it's okay. And she said, I said, if people really think it through, think about it, they'll probably arrive at this conclusion. Well, would you believe I have never thought of this? I said, well, now you have. And that's the idea. That was the end of it. It was great.
So you were saying that like things, everything was manual before the internet. So before the internet, it sounds like Vehement was basically just word of mouth, people talking to each other, and then a newsletter that was mailed out. And was that basically it? It was basically like a mailing list. Did you guys do any sort of in-person stalls at all, or had you not gotten to that point?
Yes, there was a environmental law conference, which unfortunately uh, has not been in person for 3 years. Although in 23
Mm.
we we've reserved the motel room, so I sure hope they go ahead on it. They're going to return to the first in-person conference, and
Mm.
that in the early '90s, I'd heard about it, and people were saying, "Yo, you got to go! It's a lot of fun." They have panels, and so I got to be on a panel. So, well, okay, I'll do that. And then I've been on several since then, and had a table every year, and we would have little TV sets with a VHS tape running and that sort of thing. It was pretty crude in those days, but now people don't bother. They put up a QR code.
Mm.
You want to see more? There you go. But anyway, it's still extremely interesting, and I guess that would be the first public exposure that I was able to get, and I don't know how widespread that was, but everybody
Mm.
comes in, shares their ideas, and then they go home and share their ideas. And
What was the panel that you were on? Do you remember what the title of the panel was?
yeah, it was something about immigration, and so I gave my opinion on immigration, that we need to draw lines around the lesser spoiled areas rather than geopolitical areas, because that's just coincidentally sometimes helps the environment. But we want to help the environment. We need to draw lines around um, sensitive ecological areas.
Mm.
That,
Okay, so
go
yeah, so
ahead.
it sorry, you go, you go.
That wasn't the orientation that anybody else had, I guarantee
Mm.
you. They were talking
Well,
about.
I'm guessing you're fairly used to being the one where, everyone else is orientated in the opposite direction, probably.
Oh yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, like you've got to be a certain personality type to be able to, like, one, as you did, be able to go out on a limb basically on your own, and especially with something that's seen like as controversial.
Yeah,
Um so you've definitely got to be a personality type. Um we will get to this later, but I kind of just want to ask it now that we're on the subject. What do you think it is about? Do you have any sort of practices you do, or any sort of personality traits that you've sort of reflected on that you think makes you suited to this sort of thing, being in an environment where people are constantly questioning you, being able to go on to high profile TV shows and give share your opinion? Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I guess you have to be someone who doesn't let things sink in. You don't internalize insults. You I think being able to see things their way helps a lot too.
Mm,
So you're not like I don't argue with people. There's no point in that. I like to present things so that we can find the middle ground, and so I'm not conflict oriented. I think that helps. Yeah, and if somebody wants to have a conflict, I try to do a, they call it tung fu, where you turn it around and make it a more pleasant comment
mm.
that they've made, instead of hitting it back in kind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. That's actually quite a good sort of like practical tip. So if someone else in the conversation is taking it to a more aggressive level, should we say, you take what they've done and actually turn it around to turn it into a positive to diffuse the situation, basically. Because I think a lot of people, especially when they're on the spot, they can say something which agitates the situation, which actually they maybe regret, but they don't want to show any sign of weakness. And so if you go to the next level, they will meet you, they will meet you there again. Whereas if you actually diffuse the situation, they will take it because they realize that they regret what they've done. So you hand them a way out of the situation without them losing their losing face, if you get what I mean.
Right. Yes, and it I get plenty of practice in the classroom. I never put a
Yeah.
student down. Uh, it's just really bad policy. No matter what they say, I never put them down personally. Uh, their idea, we'll look at their idea, but So I have a lot of practice at it.
Mm.
Which is why when Tucker Carlson was trying to push my buttons, and I'm going, "Hey, I'm a career substitute teacher. You can't push my buttons." So yes, that I like to aspire to that.
Mm.
And sometimes, being male, it is a challenge. Sometimes, another male comes up and they're going, "Oh, oh yeah, well," it's just kind of in our genes, I guess. Okay, stop.
No, I get what you mean because, like, for better or for worse, um, if you have a sort of, should we say, combative
Hmm.
interviewer, whether the interviewer themselves is male or female, they will generally be more combative if the person they're interviewing is male. Whereas if they're female, they usually hold back a bit more. Um, which, yeah, I've, I guess you can't, necessarily distinguish, which aggression is because you're a man and which isn't. But like, I've definitely been on the receiving end as well of like, you think, is it just because I'm a guy, they sort of feel like they can sort of go to the next level?
It could
Um,
be, at the risk of being sexist. It does
yeah,
seem
yeah.
like it.
But so you mentioned Tucker Carlson and some other interviews you've done. I want to get to that, but I got one more question before we get to that. So when you first started out with Vehement, what were the initial reactions like? Did you hit a complete brick wall with people, or did you find a lot of low hanging fruits? Because presumably no one had really raised this idea before with basically anyone that you would talk to, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah, I don't remember anybody saying, "Oh, yeah, that's great. Let's do that. That sounds great, wonderful." Even before I put out the first newsletter, which said, "We have grown to the point of needing a newsletter." Yeah, one person. That's enough, isn't it? Come on. But then I did get a lot of mail, people saying, "Yeah, finally somebody's saying it like I believe."
Mm,
There's so many people that arrive at this conclusion on their own that that's why I say I'm the finder, not the founder. I found it, gave it a name, but it was just lost amid all the
mm,
natalist cultural conditioning. So now maybe
yeah.
it won't get lost.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And when you went online, so I'm presuming that means like you made a website or something like that.
Hmm.
Did the character of the attention that you got change then? You said you were in the Reader's Digest, and there was
Hmm.
another place that you said mentioned you.
New Age
Um,
Journal, yeah.
New Age Journal. Yeah. So did the character of your sort of attention change then, or did it stay the same?
Well, a lot of people were kind of ignorant about what they were writing, and I got a lot of insults that were so funny. Of course, the usual "Why don't you kill yourself?" Uh,
Mm.
but others, and I've collected them to put on the website with my reply. And I always enjoy, replying not in kind,
Yeah, yeah,
but sometimes, it's like, yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Um, Maybe Satan does have something to do with this. I don't know.
yeah.
But that's kind of petered out. I don't get much of that anymore. I kind of miss it. This New York
Mm,
Times article and being on Dr. Phil and then some Fox presenters, that's helped. I've gotten some.
mm.
Yeah, but the hate mail is just kind of weak these days. It's not like the old days.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because yeah, why I have a reason which I maybe think is the cause of that, but why do you think it's sort of dropped off?
I think people realize that when they put it out there, it's there and it can be
Yeah.
thrown back at them. Before, people were not really that aware of just how permanent comments online are and how
Mhm.
they can regret it later, as you said, and they can be made to seem a fool. So
Mm.
they're doing it less.
Yeah, do you think it could also be because um uh, climate change or sort of general the general environmental topic has become much more prominent in the news and discussions in the past 5 to 10 years. do you think that that has meant that maybe vehement doesn't seem as extreme a thing anymore because there are a lot of people um, proposing many different ways to respond to what's happening to the environment at the moment. And so,
Right.
back in sort of like the 80s, when you sort of started building things up, maybe it was more unusual for people to hear something that was uh, something a reaction to what's happening to the environment, whereas now it's much more prominent, if you get what I mean. Do you
Mhm.
think that maybe has anything to do with it?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think that is a large part of it. Uh, the comments section from the New York Times article were so supportive. I just couldn't believe I was reading one
Mm,
after another. People were not only agreeing that there were too many of us and we needed to do something, but many of them were agreeing that it would be best for the planet if we just weren't in existence. I'm like, this is amazing. You know, the media does not promote that kind of thing. Uh, they're owned by people that higher up on the pyramid scheme who want more and more people for, low wage workers and higher rents and so on. But the ordinary people, I think there's far more awareness bubbling beneath the surface of people who are very aware of this, but they don't get much attention. I get it because it's outrageous.
mm. So you've mentioned a few times media appearances that you've made, like Tucker Carlson and other ones. And I want to go into a few of the specific ones in a minute, but generally about media, why do you think Vehement has got so much media attention? Because it has really got a lot of media attention on because I think,
Mm.
unless I'm mistaken, I'm not sure about at the time, but at least now Tucker Carlson is, I think, the most watched show in the US, right?
Yes, yes. I think he has the biggest audience. That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, how did you slash Vehement get so much media attention? Did you have certain techniques? Did you solicit for the attention, or did they come to you, or how did it all work?
No, they always came to me. I don't think they would pay any attention if I went to them. I was clickbait before the term clickbait came along. They going, oh yeah, people will look at this one. Human extinction. Yeah, okay, this will bring them in. Let's
Yeah,
see
yeah,
what
yeah,
this nut has to say. Don't give him too much time, but just enough to get people watching the show.
yeah.
And since then, actually, the New York Times article was just more than I could ever have hoped for. They just have to put in a line. I don't even know if the reporter did it or if it was an editor saying, in the past, things were not people with this idea mistreated it or I forget what. They always have to throw that in. Uh, and it's true. In the past, there were a lot of racists and eugenics, and there's been genocides forever, and
Mm,
but we're not about that. That has nothing to do with us. We are for reproductive freedom, not population control.
mm. So do you think the reason that Vehement has got so much attention is just because you were basically like a pioneer for this idea, right? Like if they were going to cover this subject, you were the guys to go to, and it was,
Hmm.
and I guess to many people, like still is seen as a very extreme thing, so it grabs
Hmm.
attention.
Right. Yeah. That wasn't the idea. I
Mm,
wasn't thinking how can I make something so outrageous people will pay attention. It's just I just thought it through and was going, yeah, this is the best thing for the
mm,
planet and even for people. And so I've started promoting it, and it has gotten some traction. And this was before antinatalism was a thing. It was the thoughts were there, and in my newsletters I was saying things like. Um, procreation today is like selling births on a sinking ship, that sort of thing.
mm,
So the idea, the same kind of sentiment as antinatalism was there, but didn't have that name. And now I think antinatalism philosophy has done more for raising awareness than Vehement ever did. I think the idea is really caught on in a lot of universities, and
mm,
um, it's even well, it's really so simple. It's just like, somebody isn't suffering where they are in non-existence. You bring them into the world, they will suffer.
Mm,
How complicated does it have to be?
mm. And so you're the what was Vehement's first sort of big game-changing media appearance? Was it Tucker Carlson, or was there one before that that got you onto Tucker Carlson?
Yeah, I think the first one was Hannity. Uh,
Is that Sean Hannity?
he's still, yeah, Sean Hannity. He's still on. At the time, it was called Hannity and Combs. Combs was sick, and his replacement actually was very sympathetic to the to the idea, and
Mm.
but of course he wasn't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The idea, I'm sure, is to bring on this environmentalist and show just how wacky they'll get if you
Mm.
don't rein them in. This one doesn't even want people to exist. Can you believe it? So,
Yeah, so how did that Sean Hannity one go as the sort of first? I'm assuming, was that your sort of first media appearance interview that you'd done? Were you nervous for it, or had you prepared a lot for it? How did it go?
it was the first major TV one. I'd done a lot of radio ones, and I did prepare for it. I used to have a
Mm,
lot of cards that I would lay out for radio, and they ask a question, I pick the right one, turn it over,
mm.
uh, and so I was going through my cards before the show. One of the crew people later said, "Yeah, I was watching you before the show, and I thought, oh, he's gonna get eaten up." But they didn't realize I'm a substitute teacher. So I did hold my own
Mm,
on the show, and you know, got a few minutes of attention, even though it was on Fox Network, which is tabloid, I guess you call it.
mm. Yeah, I don't think I've seen that one. Is it available on YouTube, that
I don't think
interview?
so. I think that was
Ah.
before that sort
Yeah,
of thing
they
happened.
recorded it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's annoying. So, yeah, you obviously held your own enough for then I'm presuming that that's how Tucker Carlson's team sort of got on your trail. Um, so how long was it until the Tucker Carlson interview?
I'd have to look at the website to.
But are we talking like years, or was it
Oh,
like
it might
quite?
have been a few years. Yeah,
Oh, okay,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
late
and
20s.
for everyone who I will link the Tucker Carlson interview, or your appearance on Tucker Carlson in the description so people can go and see it. But I have seen that one, and in it, it's quite funny because he he obviously had a preconception about what you'd be like
Hmm.
before you started the conversation,
Yes.
and I think he probably based it purely off of what he'd heard about you. By the look of it, it didn't seem like he'd actually watched any of or listened to you yourself. He just sort of heard about the idea. Um, but I think he does say at the end of the interview, right, that he was ready to be really sort of hostile with you, but you know, you're actually a very sort of affable person, and he, you know, he had no qualm with you, but he said
Right.
he obviously disagreed with what you were
Oh
saying,
yeah.
but with
Poor
you as a
kid.
person, he said he had no qualms.
Hmm.
How did you feel doing that interview, and what was your feeling coming out of it as well, how it went?
Well, I was really focused. I don't uh, have time for feelings while I'm doing that. I'm just,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, intense, trying to pick the right answer. And of course, afterwards, I'm going, "Oh, I should have said this, should have said that." But I felt good about it. I thought it turned out well. I didn't realize it would still be on the internet so many years later and still getting lots and lots of hits. It's kind of a funny thing about that. While I was sitting there waiting to get unwired, a voice came into my ear and it said, "You've got a lot of fans here, Les." So apparently they liked the way Tucker Carlson was not able to push my buttons.
Mm. And well, I'm presuming that that was someone who was talking about like the camera crew, like the
Yes,
behind the scenes people on the team.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Did you have I mean, I'm assuming the answer is no, knowing the sort of the small amount I do about how these things work, but I'm assuming you didn't have any apart from when you were actually doing the actual interview, you didn't have any one-on-one interactions with Tucker Carlson at all. There was no correspondence before or after, I'm guessing.
No, not at all. I might have talked with one of the producers. That's usually how it's done, but I didn't
Yeah,
even know
yeah.
what he looked like. In fact, I couldn't see him. It's just a bank of lights and a lens. So you have to pretend like you're
Ah.
talking to the guy.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize that. That's yeah, that's interesting. That must be actually really off-putting. I don't know if that's the case now. I'm presuming now the technology is such that like they at least have a small screen where you
Well,
can see the person you're talking to.
they may have the technology and decide it's better not to. I don't know. But in January or February of 2020, I was on Water's World, another Fox one, and no, I didn't
Mm,
even see the screen, the camera lens in that. It was just this box. I guess they feel that not having a camera lens puts the guest at ease. I don't know. Anyway, no, I didn't see him in that
mm,
interview. Don't think I've done one since. Well,
yeah.
maybe, but it would be more like what we're doing, split screen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you've been doing a lot of interviews recently, presumably around the fact that humanity has now reached 8 billion people. I'm guessing that's why there's been a sort of like renewed interest in vehement and having you on for interviews, and articles as well. Um, what what media have you been doing at the moment? There's the New York Times article. Have you been doing any others?
I was on Dr. Phil, as I mentioned, and he
Mm.
wasn't. It wasn't because of the 8 billion, and it's coincidental that I got Dr. Phil
Ah,
and the New York Times at the same time. I had recorded the Dr. Phil in around Labor Day, and had been talking with the New York Times reporter off and on for quite a while. Actually, she flew out here, and we spent a couple hours in my backyard. Very personable, really a wonderful person.
yeah,
And
yeah,
of course, I had no idea, what part of what I say is gonna,
yeah, yeah.
how you gonna turn this out. And yeah, she was very favorable. In fact, that uh, some of the Fox News people, now now even somebody who wants us to all go extinct. Is treated with kid gloves or something like. Anyway, they didn't like the idea that I was given such a glowing perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. And you did like what was the photo shoot like? Because you had that photo shoot with the in the bamboo, and
Yeah.
you were looking very I don't know what the word is.
Yeah, well, I had pneumonia. I hadn't been diagnosed yet, but that was what was going on. It was a couple days before I went to the emergency room and spent the day in the. But
Mm,
you know, you do your best. The show must go on.
mm.
And I guess I was looking philosophical, but they shoot up a lot of. Well, we used to say rolls, but now he made a lot of images, and they had a lot to choose from, and
Yeah.
chose that one. So.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And do you have any tips for if someone's watching this and they're wanting to promote the exact same message as you, or just a general message around the topic of procreation? Um do you have any tips on how to get media attention? Did you use any tactics at all to try and generate media attention, or did it literally all just happen organically?
Yeah, it all happened organically. I didn't seek out any of it. The only time I've sought out attention is to publicize booths at and tables,
Mm,
information tables, wherever it was, and that hardly anything. Although actually there was a local now defunct victim of COVID, uh, a free newspaper once a week called the Portland Mercury, and the reporter produced one of the best write-ups I've ever seen, and it's on my website. And for illustrations, they had simple line drawings of wildlife. I thought, yes, get the focus where it belongs, not on me, but on wildlife. That's what it's all about. So they really understood the perspective of voluntary human extinction movement and just did a great job of writing it up.
Mm. So you don't have any specific tips or tricks or advice
Oh,
for people to
right.
get media attention?
Sorry, that was the question.
No, it's all good.
I don't really. I guess there's an organization here called Stop Having Kids,
Mm.
and they've put up billboards and they have street theater, and they are very in your face, like Danny Shine
Yeah.
in the UK. And I if somebody wants to just go for it, that just seems like a good idea to me. Just um, whatever feels most comfortable. I
Mm.
I've never felt comfortable enough to just go out on the street and say we should go extinct, except
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
at the booth. We just had one for the first time in years, a local street fair, and I have a booth with a banner over it that says "Thank you for not breeding," and
Mm.
I can see people in the distance looking at it and going, "Oh," but they didn't come over. It's like, come on, let's talk about this. We might
Yeah, yeah.
find some middle ground, and I'm sure we would have if they would had bothered to. It's like, and the middle ground is the reproductive freedom. Do you think everyone should have the freedom to not procreate if they don't want to? Oh yeah, of course. Well, we've
Mm.
got middle ground right there.
Mm, mm. And so like you mentioned Stop Having Kids and Danny Shine as well, and I think I I might be wrong with Danny and Stop Having Kids, but I think they both, like you, have all of their media attention they've gotten has been organic.
Mm, right.
Because I've spoken to people from Stop Having Kids, and I know Danny, and I've never heard any of them say that they particularly solicited for media attention. But
Right.
I might be wrong on that.
Hmm.
But it does suggest to a certain if someone is wanting to get media attention, for something they're doing, I'm guessing at least there's been a precedent set for just like focus on that thing and just go for it and just generally put yourself out there. If an opportunity comes up, take it,
Right.
etc., etc. And it looks like people who have done that in the past, media attention has just sort of organically come to them.
Hmm.
um I mean, I have my like own small example with the Channel 4 video I did. That was completely organic as well. That I didn't solicit for that at all. I just got a message one day. Um, yeah, so it's happened with me. It's happened with you and other people. I mean, obviously, I have not gotten as much media attention as you. Like, I'm not trying
Not
to
yet,
claim that.
anyway. Be
But
ready
like,
for it.
well, so that takes me on to the next question. So, um, given that, let's say someone gets more media attention, however you got the media attention, you've done a lot of interviews, you've had a lot of attention around you generally on different formats, written, radio, video. Do you have any advice for people on how to approach or deal with that sort of attention or opportunities when they come up?
Yes, I recommend having a friend or even more than one friend uh, do the interview. My very first radio interview that was of any importance was about 92 or so. It was before the internet.
Mm,
WHYY, really a wonderful interviewer, just very courteous and
mm,
understanding. And so I go, okay, I wrote out all the questions and I had a friend give me the questions in a straightforward way. And I think we did it three times because he understood.
mm,
You don't just, okay, you're ready. No, you get, rehearse. And it really made a huge difference. I was able to answer the questions. And one of my friends said, "Are you reading from this?" I said, "No, not reading it. It's, you can anticipate what the questions will be." and be ready for it. And there will always be some that you didn't anticipate. So
Mm.
that's okay. It makes more interesting radio or TV if you're, caught a little bit off guard. You say, well, yeah, that's a good question. Actually, it's not a good question. I'm just stalling for time, like most people do when they say that's a good question.
So did you have any other techniques or things that you would do to prepare for interviews or even during interviews and after as well? Do you have any techniques before, during, and after?
um, I tend to forget them after they're done and I've seen them. I'm ready for whatever's next. And
Yeah, well, I
uh,
think that's probably wise because, like, I'm sure there are media appearances you've done that if you wanted to, you could look back on and go, "Oh, I wish I'd have said that differently," or "I wish
always,
I'd have." Yeah, yeah, yeah,
every
yeah, yeah.
time. Hmm.
Like, in fact, I think it's near impossible to do something, whether it be a discussion, debate, interview, come away from it and not wish that you'd done anything
Hmm.
differently. I think it's probably exceptionally rare that someone thinks, "Yep, I exactly hit the nail on the head. I wouldn't have done anything differently."
Not unless
So,
it's
yeah,
pre-scripted, both
yeah,
sides are scripted, it's like, and even
yeah,
then,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
ooh, I blew that line.
Mm. Yeah, and it's like, one you may think that you've done really well in an interview, and then you see the reaction from people, and you think, "Oh, if I'd have just worded it slightly differently there, maybe they
Mhm.
would have understood it better," or something like that.
For sure, yeah.
And I think, yeah, like you say, just sort of move on, think about the next one, and I think it's good in terms of I think it's good to move on from something once you've done it emotionally. Don't get emotionally attached to what you've done and
Mhm.
wish like, oh, I wish I'd done this, 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 and this. But do look back at what you've done before and analyze it as if it's someone else doing it
Yes.
so that you can learn from what you've done before. But if you imagine it's someone else doing it, you don't get the emotional attachment of like, oh, I've just, I look like an
Yeah.
idiot in that or something like that.
Yes. A debriefing is a very good
Mm,
idea, and we have a debriefing every time we have an information table. It's like,
mm,
you know, keep, drop, add, that sort of thing.
mm. So
And then,
debriefing with other people.
mhm, yes, and writing it down. And then getting ready to do the table or booth in the same place, you go, okay, what did we do last year? It's like, oh,
Mm,
we forgot to have this. Let's make sure we don't do that this time.
mm. So what is Vehement doing at the moment? Is there still sort of like different people actively doing stuff, or is it just very decentralized and there are just, general people that have just said to themselves, I'm not gonna reproduce? Or is Vehement got any active projects or anything going on, or
No, no, it still is very decentralized, and anybody can do whatever they think is best to promote the idea. I consider
mm,
myself a volunteer, not
mm,
you know, the head
yeah, yeah.
of it, and so it's not an organization even. So the next thing for me is this law conference in March of 2023.
Mm,
I'm already starting to prepare for that because it's such a big one. In fact,
mm,
a documentary filmmaker has said they'll come up from Los Angeles to, um, you know, do it's not filming anymore, recording, uh,
yeah.
and see if it's worth actually pursuing as a documentary. So that'll be
Mm.
fun to have as well.
So what are the details of that conference? Do you know where it will be and the name of it, and if people want to look it up?
Yes. It's the Public Interest Environmental Law Conference. So the website is pielc.org, pielc.org. And they have panels. There are 4 time slots for panels each day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon.
Mm,
And there are usually lots of panels. And sometimes it's
mm.
really hard to decide which one to go to because you want to go to both of them. And in
Yeah, yeah,
between,
yeah.
when they have 15 minutes in between the panels, that's when the table gets really hit uh, by people going back and forth. And of course, during the panels, there will be stragglers that haven't gone to a panel but are wandering around looking at all the tables. But there are 100 tables of environmental organizations and
Mm.
we're always the only one for the population. There have
Yeah.
been zero population growth did have one time, and I was talking with the organizer, and he said, I knew I'd get some pushback, but I never thought it would be from the other direction.
So does I mentioned Population Matters before. They're in the UK. Are they not in the US?
No, no, but
Ah,
online, a lot of people
yeah.
do. I get a lot of good information from Population Matters. I mean, they're
Mm,
they're conservative, but they have to be. Same with Population Connection, and
mm,
also there's Population Balance is really
yeah,
very active, and yeah, uh, there's one in Canada, one in Australia,
yeah.
and they're all trying to promote the idea that there are too many of us. And
Mm,
I'm not sure that is effective anymore. Anybody who is on the population denial uh, side of all of this is not going to be changed by anything we say. Hold up a graph, anything. They're just going, no. You talk about overpopulation, you're talking about racism, genocide, you're an eco fascist, and
mm,
there's this knee jerk reaction. And so don't even try with them. And I think, you know, the idea of we're overpopulated, we need to do something. Well, let's just move on to what we need to do. And that is, we need to have universal reproductive freedom. We need everybody on the planet who doesn't want to procreate to have the wherewithal to not procreate. And we're way lacking in that. It's a humanitarian, a human rights issue, really.
mm.
121 million unintended pregnancies a year, and
Yeah, I saw the UN release a statistic recently that half of all pregnancies, on average, half of all pregnancies each year are not intended,
right,
which is astounding. Like, I mean, I know that people are fairly blasé about pregnancy and reproduction, but like half, that is a lot. Like, yeah, that's mad. And like, I I think anyone, even if there's someone who doesn't agree with you or me, I think most people would recognize that like unintended pregnancies should be reduced to zero,
yes,
basically.
right, hmm
Yeah,
yeah,
like I think yeah, that is, I think, at least, like you were saying before, you try to find common ground with people. I think that is probably the easiest common ground on this topic to get with
hmm
people. Not that it's what we should settle for, but it's probably the easiest one that we can get.
right.
Um, coming back to the conference that you were talking about. So, are you doing a table there, or are you on a conference, or what's your involvement with it?
We're doing a table. If somebody invited me on a panel, I would do it, but it's a lot of work to set up a panel. You need to find others to be on it and coordinate the whole thing. And
Mm,
this year it's going to be enough just to do the table, and yeah, the table will be
yeah.
plenty of, and it's really fun having people come up and say, "What about this?"
Mm,
And
yeah,
hopefully
yeah,
there will
yeah.
be somebody with a social justice activist mentality who thinks that any mention of uh, overpopulation is eco-fascism, so that the documentary filmmaker can, you know, uh, capture the because that is a very prevalent one,
Mm,
very prevalent. That
yeah.
the idea is uh, all of the wealthy nations are not growing, which is not true, but that's the perspective people have, that
Mm,
our birth rate is below replacement level, which is a ridiculous concept anyway. And so we must mean Africa, right? What
mm,
else would one think? So
mm,
immediately that makes it racist and so on. Uh, but they don't stop to listen and say, no, we're saying everywhere, and even population matters, and population connection, they're saying that yes, people in the wealthy areas also need to have fewer offspring. They call it having children, which is pretty short-sighted, but creating new
Yeah, it's
people.
like a euphemism.
Yes, that's what everybody thinks of when they say, we're having a baby. No, you're
Mm, mm,
you're
mm.
having a middle-aged man who's on his third divorce and is wondering whether to buy a motorcycle. You know.
And there's a midlife crisis looming.
Yes, yes, for sure. No, we're having a baby.
Yeah, it is interesting. Do you know the word schema?
No.
So I learnt it from I think it was Melanie Joy who wrote. I'm going to get the title wrong, but she wrote a book called something like "Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows" or something like that.
Mm,
And she talks about the schemas that we have for different animals, and she uses the example of as an analogy with a nurse. The schema we have of a nurse is a woman in sort of like the traditional sort of white and blue
mhm,
like nurse's uniform that's
mhm,
more old fashioned. And basically a schema is like the image in our mind we conjure up which we associate with a word.
mhm,
So if I said to someone, well, let's just apply it straight to this topic. Like if I said to someone having a kid or y- reproducing or something like that, people would automatically, because of the wording as well, having a kid,
mhm,
people automatically think of the sort of bouncing baby, like
mhm.
a healthy baby that's enjoying themselves.
Right.
And but that's because it's the schema, and I think the schema gets in the way of us thinking about, well, actually no, you're not just creating a baby that's going to be a baby forever. You're going to be creating that person who will eventually get dementia or may get cancer or is going to face all these, is going to hate it when you as their parent die, for example.
Right.
Like you're creating this person that's going to go through all these things, not just that sort of bouncing baby. It's really interesting how our language sort of plays into that schema.
It
Yeah.
really does. Yes, and it inhibits logical thinking, as you said. So
Mm,
it's especially true of our natalist cultural conditioning because babies and children hold a special spot. They trigger an emotional response. That's why I try to never never say have a child or have a baby. I use there are several other terms that
mm.
apply, offspring and so on, so that it's not, like we decided to have a kitten. We don't like cats, but we're going to have a kitten, maybe a puppy. They're so
Yeah, yeah,
much
yeah.
fun.
So if someone has been listening and they want to follow you and Vehement, where can people um find you and Vehement?
Yeah, it's the website is VHEMT.org.
Cool. I'll link that in the description. Is that the only place that Vehement is? Does Vehement have any social media or is it just the website?
Yeah, there are some Facebook groups and other social media. Not Twitter. They don't do groups, do they? I don't know. Anyway,
No, I don't think so.
yeah, but I'm on Twitter personally, but not
Mm.
so far. The new owner hasn't blocked me yet. So
And is if people want to follow you as an individual, is Twitter the main place, or are there other places they can follow you?
either Twitter or Facebook, and it's Let's Unite.
Cool. I'll link you and Vehement in the description so that people can find all those links. They don't have to scour the internet for
All
them.
right.
Um, but cool, yeah. I know. I think we've gone over everything that I wanted to go over. I thought it was like really interesting to hear about because, like I said, like I heard about Vehement years ago when I was a kid, maybe like 15 years ago or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Um, so it and so it's sort of like I've been vaguely aware of it since then, and then I got to know it a bit more like a couple of years ago when I sort of got more involved in antinatalist things, but I've never really known like the full story and spoken to you about it. So it's been really nice. Thanks for coming on.
Naturally, glad to do it. It's been fun talking with you.
I will say that is the sickest thing I think I've ever heard, but you were one of the cheeriest guests we've ever had. I don't know how the two fit together, but I appreciate your coming on last night.
Thank you, Tucker.
Thanks.